We've all experienced that sudden, that paralyzing freeze. You know, you're sitting in a meeting or maybe you're at a networking event.
Oh, absolutely. We have all been there.
And you have your thoughts perfectly arranged in your native language, right there in your head. You know exactly what you want to communicate.
The nuance, the humor.
The exact point you need to make. But the second you open your mouth to speak in English, it's like a switch flips.
Your heart starts racing.
Yeah, your palms get sweaty. Suddenly your entire vocabulary just vanishes into thin air.
And you're left staring blankly.
Just absolutely terrified of making a mistake. So today we're taking a deep dive into a really brilliant source text titled The Art of Fearless English Speech: How to Speak English Without Fear.
It is such a crucial topic.
It really is. And our mission today isn't to give you a grammar lesson. It's to unpack the complex psychology behind what actually holds us back when communicating in a second language.
And more importantly, how to dismantle that barrier completely.
Exactly, because it's a universal experience. It resonates with anyone who has ever stepped out of their linguistic comfort zone.
What's fascinating here is how the source material frames this. It explicitly refuses to treat speaking English as just a mechanical skill.
Right, like memorizing vocabulary lists or drilling verb conjugations.
Exactly. It treats it as an art. It directly connects the act of speaking without fear to profound personal growth and psychological resilience.
It forces us to look under the hood at the cognitive mechanisms.
The sheer neuroscience behind why our brains freeze up in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this because the title itself is so evocative, right? The Art of Fearless English Speech.
It really is.
But I want to start with the fear itself because it feels it feels completely disproportionate to the situation.
It does.
If you think about it rationally, making a grammar mistake isn't physically dangerous. There's no tiger chasing you in the conference room.
You aren't going to get thrown in prison for using the wrong preposition.
Right. Yet the physiological response in our bodies, the adrenaline, the cortisol, it feels exactly like a life or death situation. What is the actual root of this fear that the text is addressing?
To understand that, we really have to look at the psychology of adult identity, which the text delves into quite deeply.
Adult identity.
Yes. When you analyze the root of the fear, it's almost entirely tied to your ego.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you communicate in your native language, you're a fully formed, competent adult. You're articulate.
You can express subtle nuances. You can be sarcastic.
Exactly. You can sound intelligent and authoritative. You have spent decades building this sophisticated linguistic persona.
That makes sense.
But the exact moment you switch to a language you haven't fully mastered, you're suddenly stripped of all those advanced tools.
You feel vulnerable. You basically feel like a toddler again, struggling to string together 3 words just to ask for a glass of water.
Exactly. The fear isn't actually about the English language. That is the illusion.
So what is it really about?
The text argues that the fear is about a sudden, sharp loss of perceived status. It is the fear of sounding foolish and being judged by others.
Ah, the social judgment aspect.
Right. And from a neurological standpoint, the brain interprets this sudden drop in social status as an existential threat.
An existential threat, just from a grammar mistake.
That's why your amygdala fires up the fight-or-flight response. Your brain literally thinks, if I sound incompetent, the tribe will reject me and I will die.
That is wild, but it makes perfect sense. It's an identity crisis disguised as a language barrier.
Completely.
We're so used to being the smartest person in the room, or at least a highly capable professional, and suddenly we're sweating because we can't remember the word for spreadsheet.
It happens to the best of us.
There's a quote from the source text that really stuck with me on this point. The author writes, "Fearless speech requires the temporary surrender of your adult ego."
That is a powerful line.
So when they talk about fearless speech, it's really about the willingness to be emotionally vulnerable, isn't it?
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly explains a phenomenon linguists have studied for years.
Which is?
Why children seem to absorb and speak new languages so much faster and more seamlessly than adults.
Right. People always say kids have spongy brains for language. But you're saying it's not just neuroplasticity, it's psychology.
Precisely. In language acquisition theory, there's a concept known as the affective filter. It was developed by linguist Stephen Krashen.
The affective filter.
Yes. Think of it as an invisible psychological wall. When a learner is anxious, self-conscious, or afraid of making a mistake, this filter goes way up.
And blocks them.
It literally blocks the brain from accessing the language it already knows.
Wow.
Now, children have a very low effective filter. A toddler doesn't have decades of ego built up around their intellectual identity.
Right, they don't care if they look silly.
Exactly. When they mispronounce a word, they don't feel a deep, burning sense of shame. They just laugh and try again.
They just keep going.
They are inherently fearless because society hasn't yet conditioned them to fear judgment.
While adults are walking around with these massive, impenetrable, effective filters,
Yeah.
blocking everything.
Exactly. For adults, achieving that fearless state means actively unlearning the perfectionism that our educational and professional systems have drilled into us.
Because we're taught from a young age that mistakes are punishable offenses.
Right. A red X on a test means you failed. But language doesn't work like a math test.
I hear what you're saying, and the theory sounds great, but let me push back a little here.
Please do.
Let's be realistic. In a fast-paced corporate boardroom, or if you're pitching a huge client, doesn't fumbling your words or making glaring grammar mistakes actually make you look incompetent?
It's a fair concern.
We can talk about lowering our effective filter all day, but out there in the real world, people absolutely do judge you. How does the source reconcile that reality?
That's a highly valid point, and the source actually tackles this head-on by redefining the metrics of success.
Redefining them how?
The text asks us to look closely at what actually constitutes competence in communication. Most language learners measure success by asking themselves, did I use the perfect grammar? Did I have the perfect accent?
Right, they want to be flawless.
And if they make an error, they deem the entire interaction a failure. But the text argues that true, fearless communication measures success by asking one simple question.
Which is?
Did the other person understand my idea?
So it's shifting the goalpost from perfection to connection.
Yes. And regarding your point about the boardroom, what makes someone look incompetent isn't usually the grammatical error itself.
It's not.
No, it's the panic that follows the error. It's the freezing up, the profuse apologizing, the visible lack of confidence.
Nah, that makes sense.
The text makes a brilliant analogy here. It compares speaking a language to playing an instrument in a jazz band.
Oh, I like that, because jazz is all about improvisation.
Exactly. If a jazz pianist hits a wrong note during a solo, the worst possible thing they can do is stop playing, look terrified, and apologize to the audience.
That would completely ruin the performance.
The professional thing to do is just keep the rhythm going, play through it, and flow right into the next measure.
And half the time, the audience doesn't even notice.
Or they assume it was intentional. The rhythm of the conversation is overwhelmingly more important than the individual notes, or in this case, the individual words.
Because native speakers make mistakes all the time too, right?
Constantly. They use improper grammar, they lose their train of thought, they stumble, but they don't freeze because they aren't afraid of the language itself.
That's a really sharp distinction. The panic is what damages your credibility, not the misplaced verb.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a time I was at a conference in Berlin trying to speak German to a vendor. I totally butchered the sentence structure. I think I accidentally told him his software was a potato or something ridiculous like that.
The potato.
Yeah, a potato. But I just laughed, corrected myself, and kept going. He laughed too, and we ended up having a great conversation.
That is wonderful.
But if I had shrunk back and turned red, it would have been agonizingly awkward for both of us.
That is the perfect real-world example of what the source calls treating a mistake as a navigational tool rather than an indictment of your intelligence.
A navigational tool.
Yes. It's real-time feedback that helps you calibrate. You use the mistake to build rapport.
So if we're looking at practical, actionable steps for you, the listener, to start speaking English confidently right now, how do we operationalize this?
We have to get practical.
Because telling someone don't be afraid is about as useful as telling someone who is angry to just calm down. It never works. What are the actual mechanics of practicing this art?
The source outlines several key strategies, and the first is essentially a form of psychological exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy for language.
Yes. You cannot overcome a fear of speaking by quietly reading grammar books or doing exercises on a language app in the total safety of your bedroom.
You have to step into the arena.
This means actively seeking out low-stakes conversations to habituate your nervous system.
Habituate the nervous system, meaning getting your brain used to the idea that speaking imperfectly doesn't equal death.
Exactly. Start incredibly small. Order coffee in English. Ask a stranger for directions, even if you already know the way.
Leave a voice note for a colleague instead of a typed Slack message.
That is a great one. The neurological goal here is to train your amygdala through repeated, safe exposures.
You're proving to your brain, look, I used the wrong tense and the barista still handed me a latte. The world didn't end.
You are slowly dismantling that fight-or-flight response through undeniable evidence of your own survival.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. A lot of people I talk to who struggle with English say their biggest trigger isn't just making a mistake, it's the speed of the conversation.
The speed is a massive factor.
They feel this immense, crushing pressure that if they don't respond immediately and rapidly to a question, they're failing. There's this misconception that fluency means speaking at a million miles an hour.
That's a crucial observation. And it leads directly into the second major strategy from the text, which is mastering the pacing of the conversation.
Pacing.
The text argues that a very powerful mechanic behind building confidence is deliberately embracing the pause.
But wait, if I pause for 5 seconds before answering a question on a Zoom call, won't people just think my internet connection froze? Or worse, that I have no idea what I'm talking about?
It is all about how you execute the pause.
Hmm.
When we're nervous, our default setting is to rush.
We speak faster to get the painful experience over with.
Exactly. And this cognitive overload inevitably leads to more mistakes, which then causes more panic, creating a vicious cycle.
So how do we break it?
The text advises taking deliberate control of the tempo. It's not about a blank, terrified stare. It's a strategic pause.
A strategic pause.
You take a breath. You use a filler phrase like, that's an interesting point. Let me think about the best way to phrase this.
So you're narrating the pause. You're signaling to the listener that you're in control of the silence, not a victim of it.
Precisely. And from a psychological standpoint, pausing actually makes you look more thoughtful and authoritative.
That is true. Think about some of the most confident, powerful speakers in the world. Politicians, CEOs, thought leaders.
They don't rush to fill dead air.
They use silence to their advantage to build anticipation.
By giving yourself permission to pause, you're giving your prefrontal cortex the crucial milliseconds it needs to retrieve the English vocabulary you've stored up.
Rather than letting the panicked amygdala run the show.
Exactly.
I love the idea of taking control of the interaction rather than letting the language control you. It puts you back in the driver's seat.
It really does.
What else does the source suggest? Because we've covered the internal mind game, the ego, the pacing, but communication is fundamentally a two-way street.
This raises an important question, and it brings us to what might be the most transformative strategy in the entire text: shifting your focus outward.
Shifting it outward.
When we are afraid, human nature dictates that we turn inward. We become hyper-focused on ourselves.
We're thinking, how is my mouth moving? Do I sound stupid? Did I just use the wrong preposition?
What do they think of me?
Yeah.
We become entirely self-obsessed, which, paradoxically, makes it almost impossible to actually communicate.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the spotlight effect in psychology, right? Where you assume everyone in the room is scrutinizing your every move, when in reality, they're probably just thinking about what they're going to have for lunch.
Exactly.
When you're stuck in your own head like that, you aren't even really in the conversation anymore. You're just the actor watching yourself perform from the rafters.
You transition from being a communicator to being a performer. And to break out of that paralyzing state, the text insists you have to radically redirect your focus onto the listener.
So you look at the person you are speaking to.
Are they nodding? Do they look confused? Are they engaged with the idea you're sharing?
By making the interaction entirely about them and ensuring they are receiving your message, you relieve the immense pressure on yourself to perform perfectly.
That is such a powerful paradigm shift, because when you actually start focusing on the other person, you realize something really comforting. Most people are incredibly forgiving listeners.
They really are.
The source text touches on this beautifully. Think about it from the reverse perspective.
Okay.
When someone who is non-native speaks to you in your native language, and they stumble or use a clunky sentence structure, do you sit there aggressively judging their grammar?
No, never.
Do you think less of their intelligence?
Almost never. Usually you're just impressed they're speaking a second language in the first place, and your natural human instinct is to help them bridge the communication gap.
You listen for the meaning, not the syntax.
Exactly. We bend over backwards to understand them, yet for some reason we assume that when we are the ones speaking the second language, the other person turns into a ruthless grammar critic.
We do.
We have to extend the same grace to ourselves that we so easily give to others.
The fear we project onto others, the idea that they are harshly judging our English, is almost always a pure reflection of our own internal critic.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Yes, the world out there is generally much kinder than the voice inside our own heads. By recognizing this, we take away the fear's leverage. We realize the monster in the closet is just a shadow.
That is a comforting thought.
And this brings us back full circle to why the source material insists on calling this an art.
Right, because science demands absolute precision and exact formulas. But art demands expression. Art is messy.
Precisely. When you allow yourself to express complex ideas fearlessly, even if the grammatical edges are a bit rough, you are engaging in the true art of language. You're conveying humanity.
So what does this all mean? I think that distinction is the ultimate takeaway from the art of fearless English speech.
It is the core message.
If we synthesize everything we've covered today, the roadmap to speaking English without fear isn't about studying harder. It isn't about buying another textbook or doing more flashcards.
It's about fundamentally rewiring your mindset.
It's about recognizing that your adult ego is getting in the way, embracing the vulnerability of being a learner, and redefining mistakes as vital data points rather than personal failures.
It's also about taking physical control of the moment, using strategic pauses to lower your heart rate, and shining the spotlight outward onto the listener to ensure true connection.
And if we connect this to the broader scope of your life, mastering this fearless approach doesn't just improve your English proficiency, it radically improves how you navigate the world.
I totally agree.
The courage it takes to speak up in a crowded room with an imperfect accent is the exact same courage it takes to pitch a bold new business idea, to stand up for yourself in a relationship, or to take a massive risk in your career.
It transfers over.
Overcoming the fear of speaking a second language is basically a training ground for overcoming fear in every other aspect of life.
You're building a muscle of resilience every single time you open your mouth to speak, despite the anxiety.
You are proving to yourself repeatedly that your voice and your ideas matter far more than your vocabulary.
Which leaves anyone listening right now with a clear imperative. You have the conceptual tools now.
You understand the neuroscience of the amygdala hijack.
The psychology of the affective filter and the mechanics of shifting from perfection to connection.
But understanding the theory is only half the battle.
The execution requires bravery. The next time you find yourself in a situation where you need to speak English and you feel that familiar, icy knot of anxiety in your stomach, recognize it for what it is.
It's just your ego trying to protect you from a prehistoric threat that doesn't exist.
Acknowledge it, take a deep breath, and speak anyway. Fearlessness, as the text reminds us, is not the absence of fear. It is taking action in spite of it.
Using the fear as fuel rather than a stop sign, I think that's the perfect place to land today. The art of fearless English speech is ultimately a call to action to step out of the safety of the classroom and into the messy, beautiful reality of human connection.
It is a profound shift.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to really mull over. We spend so much time obsessing over the words we might get wrong that we rarely stop to calculate the actual cost of our silence.
And the cost of silence.
The source text hints at this, and it's profound. Imagine what you could accomplish, the deep relationships you could build, the career doors that would swing open if fear simply wasn't a factor in how you communicate.
It changes everything.
What brilliant ideas are trapped inside your head right now, hidden behind a wall of anxiety? What incredible, life-changing conversations are just waiting to happen the moment you finally decide to speak up? Think about it, and then go out there and start talking.